This is your host, Andrew Nelson Redondo, and this is Typistory. As a graphic designer and exhibition designer in the museum field, I have a personal passion for looking to history for inspiration and typography for my designs. With my experience in the design field for over 10 years, I have noticed an enticing note to why typography, styles, and tastes change over the decades and centuries. Sometimes, due to social changes in our world environment, the need for an easier visual understanding of the written word per the masses. In other ways, the human complex has been associated by time with the need to communicate feelings, ideas, and desires, etc. But where can we begin? When it comes to establishing a baseline for the series of studying typography through history, in my opinion, it can probably be given credit to the creation of the Phoenician alphabet at around 1500 BCE. To understand typography, one must first understand the alphabet we all learned in elementary school. Those letters and how they look can be found in origin around the Mediterranean Sea at about 1500 BCE. Inside this world, cuneiform and hieroglyphics were the big players at play, each forming a multitude of characters and visuals, estimated in the thousands. This was difficult for the general masses of the Mediterranean who did not belong to the educated elite. Enter the Phoenicians, from the lands we know of today as present-day Lebanon, Syria, and Israel. This territory was known by different but familiar names to us today. To the Egyptians, Put, to the people of Eastern Mediterranean as Canaan, and to the Greeks as Phoenicia. Among the nations at the time, the Phoenicians were recorded in history as a trade-based nation, holding a populace of colonies that spread throughout the Mediterranean and the North African coast. Through their trade goods prized throughout this particular world, a new item is about to make its everlasting mark on the human complex: the Phoenician alphabet. At the time, the Phoenician alphabet was placing its chips on the so-called poker table. Ideograms were the preferred appearance of a written language, although it gave way to presenting ideas in a visual sense. Though simple in its approach and rudimentary at best, it was at most full of faults. Think, for example, hieroglyphs. The symbols meant to describe a literal object came to have a multitude associations or meanings. The symbol ox came to mean food as well. Unfortunately, others from other nations were not familiar with this. They would be overwhelmed by the complexity of this written language with thousands of symbols to understand. Therefore, to appease cross-trade with other nations, much like today, people would develop new tools of communication to serve the needs in trade, economics, and politics. This is how Phoenicians come into the mix with their new offering. Phoenicians quickly learned that they could tweak the system into something much more manageable and efficient. If they drastically reduced the number of characters to individual sounds and not entire syllables, they could effectively create the beginnings of what we consider an alphabet. Unlike ours with 26 characters, theirs would begin with a humble 22. This first form would be known as Proto-Canaanite, based around an alphabet of 22 characters, each representing a sound in the Phoenician language. Not all sounds were immediately represented. Phoenician, for starters, was the basis of consonants, as there were no uses of what we consider vowels until much later with the Greeks. We'll touch on them in episode 2. Readers would simply imply based on their knowledge of Phoenician with the presence of the vowel sounds as they read the written form from right to left across clay tablets or pieces of early parchment such as papyrus. Historically, all physical remains of the language to us in modern day can only be traced in large part to clay artifacts, as papyrus is known to degrade over time and was not lasting. The earliest Phoenician inscription that has survived is the Iarim epitaph at Biblios in Phoenicia, dating from the 11th century BCE and written in the North Semitic alphabet. Essentially, according to archaeology, the written form of the Phoenician letterform evolved over 3 stages. In its first was the protoform we've discussed in Northern Semitic, and was in use until the 1st century BCE in Phoenician proper. Its second form was derived from colonial scripts, Cypro-Phoenician, from the 10th to the 2nd century BC, and Sardinian circa 9th century BC varieties. The third form introduces what we consider today as font weights or styles continuing from the colonies, the Punic and Neo-Punic alphabets of Carthage, which continued to be written until about the 3rd century Common Era. Punic was a monumental script, and Neo-Punic a cursive form. In these forms, the alphabet remained the same, a Semitic alphabet of 22 letters written from right to left. A characteristic notion with regards to Punic and Neo-Punic was the idea of descenders. Think in terms of our alphabet or typography. A descender is the portion of a letter that extends below the baseline of a font. These can be seen in lowercase letters like G, J, P, Q, and Y. In some instances, using descenders for the tails on a few uppercase letters as J and Q. The parts of characters that extend above the X height of a letter form are called ascenders. Typical for the majority of Phoenician and mostly Punic, were known for these very exaggerated descenders. These forms helped to distinguish the evolution of the initial letter form towards Punic from other regional branches of the script, in example Hebrew, where the descenders grew shorter over time. This was a great opportunity for providing a break for the eye to distinguish the changing characters on a tablet when reading the inscribed content. From this point, we will continue next time with the attributes brought forth by the Greeks in the next episode, as they introduce new evolutions in their contributions to the written letter in the world of the Mediterranean. Tell us in the comments how you enjoyed this initial first episode of Typistory, History by Design, and what you look forward to learning about in the coming episodes as we continue exploring for now the birth of the modern letter form throughout history and its influence on the world around it. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you tune in next time.